Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Interesting Ideas. My name is Stan Houston, and this is the first day of Hanukkah, the Festival of Lights. And we're going to talk about that because it has more than a few interesting ideas. And of course, for those who celebrate the Christian tradition of Christmas, this is the proverbial busy week before. That's right, the busy week before Christmas, which takes place on Sunday this year. And so we're leading up to that, and we're going to be talking about that in Comfort and Joy and Crisis. That's right. Comfort and Joy and Crisis, some interesting ideas and reflections on the season and the holiday that is just before us. Whether you are followers or members of the tradition or not, you're going to find that there's some very interesting things that we will be able to pick from the story, and perhaps some ideas that might be very current for today's mess we are in. So today we're going to start talking about Hanukkah, and so why don't you join me for about 15 minutes on this Monday Meets the Marketplace day, and you've had a busy day. Maybe you're just going to try and cool down and settle down and perhaps think of something encouraging or helpful on Monday evening. Interesting Ideas, that's the name of the program, and it begins right now. And once again, for those of you who are listeners new to the show, hey, that noise at the beginning is part of our tradition. The radio signals are now, well over 100 years old, and a lot of classic radio had what was called, and it still does in some cases, a sounder. And I've been collecting the sounders from radio stations and radio situations around the world. And what it was is that most people who were listening to the radio were doing something else. And that was the wonderful thing about radio. You just didn't have to sit there and watch it. You could be doing something else. And so if they wanted to get your attention, they would have a noise theme. And that's the best way to describe it sometimes. It may not have had any melody to it. Perhaps like in the NBC, it had a certain lilt to it that had a meaning. But oftentimes it was just a combination of musical and sound effects. And what it's saying is, please pay attention. And of course, it wasn't terribly polite. It just kind of had an interrupting sound, but it meant we believe this is important because it was the news of the day. And many people found out that, they could get their news through the newspaper. And that's how most people did it for many, many years. But with the invention of radio, all of that changed. And now people could actually get their news without actually paying the 3 cents or a nickel or a dime for a newspaper. They could just listen to the radio. And in the midst of all of the programs and commercials, they could get the news for free. And so that's what happened, the news. And that was a news sounder. But it meant, please pay attention. And we're lucky. We're lucky for people who might want to create new modern sounders for us to go along with our old-fashioned traditional sounders, like ones that we have scavenged from the mutual networks, CBS, NBC, BBC. That's that story there. Just an interesting idea. It does you of no value except to think about this. Hey, when you are going to try and make a speech or a talk or a radio program, it would be very good to obviously have sound effects. You've heard of having a slogan or a logo. Now, we'll teach you this because of the modern media. You may also want a song or a sound or a nice noise that is kind of a signature sound for you and your business. So there you go. An interesting idea right there. Today is the first day of Hanukkah. It actually began what we would call Sunday evening, because in the Jewish calendar, the days begin at sunset and they go to the following sunset, as opposed to the usual midnight break in the day. And so it is Hanukkah. Now, Hanukkah is a Jewish festival. It is a religious holiday. It is not necessarily as important as some of the days like Rosh Hashanah or particularly Yom Kippur. And in fact, some Jews will not even celebrate Hanukkah because they say it actually is too minor a holiday because it didn't quite make the cut in terms of the solid scripture. And you say, what are you talking about? Well, just let it sit there. But here's the point. It is a holiday, and it has a story behind it. Now, if you don't know the story of Hanukkah, take some time this week to find it out. Now, there's a whole bunch of stuff. You can go to the Wikipedia, as I did, just to make sure I had some of my facts and figures straight. And even Wikipedia did not have that little notice that says, well, this article needs some help. I mean, it was so complete by the best authorities. And I would really encourage you to know the story behind Hanukkah, which is now called in many cases the Festival of Lights. And most people have heard of it. And of course, a number of people know a little bit about the menorah, the candlestick, with the 8 candles on the side, 4, and top one. And they see that. It's as symbolic as perhaps the Christmas tree is in terms of the Christian symbols. But I would encourage you, take some time to find out the story. And it's a story of great courage, and it's a story that has significant meaning. And in many cases, it celebrates something that the Jewish people have had to deal with long before the event that brought it into being, and certainly in many hundreds of years afterwards. And that was how do we survive? And in an act of desperate courage, they were able to survive, and they were able to celebrate a victory. And it was a victory that had a small little part to it that has the holiday flavor and, you might say, meaning behind it. And it's such a meaning that is helpful for all of us. So just as I oftentimes, because we were such good friends, one of my top clients who understood me and I understood him, I would go into his wonderful office and I would come right up to him and I would say, "Hi, Steve, Merry Christmas." And he was not offended at all. He would say, "Yes, and Happy Hanukkah, Stan." And we smiled and we embraced for the holidays and wished each other the best. And by the way, I think that's the way it should be. Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah. Okay, here's the little bit of the story I want you to think about. Go to that menorah, and then let me ask you a very important question. Do you believe in miracles? Even small miracles? Because part of what this season is all about is that things happened that aren't supposed to happen. Things that don't fit into the natural scheme of things. And so, here's a good question for you, because unfortunately, most of us today are dominated by a life and a world that doesn't believe in miracles. And so that's a problem. So why don't you think about that? Do you believe in miracles? And I'll be right back. I've been recently reading a description of two men. They are French. One's Jewish and one's Christian, and they're having a conversation about what they call the God question. And it's quite a fascinating, rather deep. It wouldn't appeal to most people. You know, I'm kind of weird and geeky, but it had an appeal to me. Particularly because it was, I'm a kind of a teacher of philosophy, going way back to when I was a teacher to high school students about philosophy of all things. And but in effect, they point out, here's the deal. Unfortunately, today, our life is oftentimes dominated by the state. That's right, by the state, or by science and technology. We're having a problem in America with what is called the border crisis. Well, that's because one man in a very powerful position in the state said, we're going to do it this way, and everybody has to do it that way, and it's led to a whole lot of situations, and what some people would say a lot of problems. Because the state is very powerful. And then some of the mistakes we made during the pandemic is because follow the science. Well, the science is not necessarily, or scientific method in thinking, is not necessarily the best way to know what to do. No, it's not. There may be far other and far better ways to know what we should do and what we should think than science. So, what do we do? Well, perhaps we do something a little bit different. And I recall from the old Star Trek program, remember that there was Spock, and he was the rational man, totally logical. There was McCoy, the doctor, who was very much emotional and somewhat irrational. And then, of course, the character of Kirk, played by William Shatner, was to be that man in the middle who not only had a heart and soul, like the doctor, but also a mind and a logic and a scientific mind like Spock. And he was kind of the combination of them both. And that's why he was in the captain's chair, because he had that leadership quality. Interesting idea. But remember Scotty, the engineer, and oftentimes when Kirk would ask for a certain thing to be done with the warp speed engines, he would say, hey, Captain, we can't break the laws of physics. That can't be done. You know, I cannot alter the laws of physics. Well, many of us believe that's the case even today. Now, we're not going to get into a big discussion of miracles, but the wonderful little event that made the menorah part of it is that in the celebration, they had just enough oil. Just enough oil for one day of celebration. And guess what the story is? It lasted for 8 days. Where did the other oil for day 2, day 3, and day 4 come from? It's a mystery. It's a miracle. Now, that certainly is a small miracle, okay? You had one candle, and it lasted, instead of one day, it somehow, we don't know how, it lasted for a few days more. A small miracle, if indeed. Now, my point is, here we go. Oftentimes I say let's pray for a Christmas miracle. And I wonder how many people join me in that. Do you? Do you believe in a Christmas miracle? Do you believe in any kind of miracle? You see, this is the season of the year, whether we know it or not, that we have to deal with the idea that there's more to the natural world. There's another world. It's the supernatural. It's the seen that we know and the unseen that we don't know. Do you believe in miracles? That's the deal. That's the question that we get to ask at this time of the year. And Hanukkah is one of those wonderful celebrations that helps bring that to mind as you light the candles and celebrate the good times, the food and the festivity that the people of the tradition do. They have to confront, at least for a while, could it be true that there really was a miracle? Something happened that broke the laws of physics, something that's a mystery, something we don't understand. And when we light the menorah, we celebrate that idea that there is indeed, from time to time, even in small ways, a miracle. I'm Stan Houston. These are interesting ideas. We'll be right back. "2023 is upon us." Those of you who listen know that I started celebrating the beginning of the year some time ago. And of course, when the calendar says New Year, to me it's kind of just another day. So let it be. But in 23, the predictions are that we are in for a time of recession, that the economy will have a deep difficulty. Unfortunately, this is not a happy time for many people because they have already been given notice that their jobs are gone. As businesses anticipate the coming recession, thousands of people are being laid off now. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. So what we need to do is, as we should every year, seek a resurrection of hope, a renewal of purpose, an accumulation of spiritual, emotional, and intellectual resolve and energy, and say, by my good efforts and God's grace, it'll be better this year. I think I can help you. I have a number of ideas that might be useful to you and your company. Many, many years in broadcasting, a teacher and a business performance coach. I know that in some way I can help you with the issue before you. And if I can't, and if it can be helped, I probably know somebody who can. So reach out to me at stanhouston@gmail.com, stanhouston@gmail.com. Our website or web stage for the radio work we do, which is a key to what we're all about, witradio.net, witradio.net. And then I did what I encourage people to do. I just put in Stan Houston on the search engine, and a ton of stuff comes up. All kinds of radio programs, hundreds of videos, lots of things I've written, and whatever happens to come up just might be, by some small act of a miracle, helpful to you. So give it a try. Best and blessings to you, and let's make sure that we best and bless others, because that's the best way for it to happen back to you. We'll be back. Bye for now.